You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to Kerry Greenaway and Mark Manley on the Dark Mirror Paranormal Show, only on Parasearch Radio.
Good evening and welcome to the Dark Mirror Paranormal Show. My name is Kerry Greenaway and it's the Friday night frolicky show. It is the Dark Mirror Show. Now in the studio tonight I am joined by the lovely Carl Hutchinson. Good evening, Carl.
Good evening, Kerry. How the devil are you this evening?
I don't even want to talk about how I feel right now, thanks.
Okay, I'm glad I asked that one.
All I want to say is I want to tell people, think about the people that are working still and working long hours in retail at this moment in time, trying to help you get the perfect Christmas present. And it's not our fault if we don't have it in stock. All I'm saying on the subject. It's been a hell of a day.
And our rather amazing person that's on live tonight with us is...
Yes, we have the lovely Jamie Krashna. Good evening, Jamie.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be back. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Kerry.
And Mark, at some point, will be joining us when he sorts his audio out.
Yes, he will. Let's hope.
Fingers crossed, anyway, right,
yes.
Guys?
Yes, absolutely.
We have everything crossed over here.
We are crossing everything. Well, or are we? Are we really?
Let's not and see we did.
Yeah, but everybody wants to hear the famous words from Mark.
Aliens!
Nobody does it like Mark, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought tonight, being as we're so close to Christmas, we would talk about the Nativity, because like it's another one of those stories in the Bible that is like littered with weird stuff, right?
It is. We have everything from angel sightings, which I'm sure are wondrous, Mark. Aliens, and choirs of angels. We have lots of interesting things happening. So hopefully we can cover that or answer any questions that Kerry finds in the chat room.
Oh, well, you know me. I don't need to ask questions. I'm always asking questions. Right, so what I want to do, I want to start from the beginning. I would like to know, let's talk about, obviously, the story of Christmas is about the birth of Jesus. Obviously, this is very Christian perspective, everybody. We're looking at it just from that perspective tonight. But this is about the birth of Jesus, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
So let's go pre-Christmas and talk about conception, the Immaculate Conception.
I think that we have spoken about that before. The birth, we have to kind of go back a little bit because there was so much foretold about Christ coming and even a predecessor in his cousin, John the Baptist. And the prophecy was in Isaiah. It went all the way back to the book of Isaiah, and that this child would be born into even hostile circumstances. And so the Immaculate Conception, of course, is that...
Hello?
That the Spirit of God... I'm sorry, I think I've lost you.
No, I can hear you.
Okay, the Spirit of God impregnated Mary the Virgin without any assistance from a male human donor. So that's quite fascinating.
Yeah, I read an interesting article earlier that said that, obviously Mary was given a bit of a heads up that this was going to happen. And then...
Yes.
But Joseph was also given a heads up as well, because he was having difficulty believing Mary. Because obviously Mary said to her husband-to-be, because they weren't actually married at this point, were they?
No, they were betrothed. And that's, that was just the worst kind of scandal, being betrothed and pregnant, and then your fiance tells you, oh, well, not only am I pregnant, I'm pregnant by God, by Jehovah. And so that, that would cause some wrestling in the spirit of Joseph. And he was visited and told, do not worry, that the Spirit of God came upon her and impregnated her. And that is the story with that. And in all the additional books and text, it says that, it was still very, very hard to believe. And, of course, people were, skeptical and judgmental and all of those things. So typical.
Well, that's right. But then after was it Gabriel who came down and had words with him? He then became more, what's the word, accepting of the fact and was all right.
Yes, he definitely accepted it and became, he loved Mary and cared for her, protected her honor and integrity. He didn't leave because he would have had every right to leave her and abandon them, but he didn't, which is damn admirable. So, I think he had the worst of it through all of it, Mary being pregnant and having great purpose, and then Jesus being the actual Son of God. And Joseph was kind of an afterthought, really, when you think of it. And he, really, I think, seemed to have the worst of everything, having to bear the burden of shame and everything that came along with it. So he did pretty well.
Lads?
Oh, hello.
Oh, look, someone's with us.
Hello.
Sorry.
I love the sarcasm now.
Oh, how can you tell? Jamie's getting used to us.
Issues. I had a few issues. 1 minute I was there, then I was gone, and then I was looking at the lovely Mark, and then I wasn't. And then...
We're both going, what the hell?
Exactly.
Nice.
We were just a bit confused what was going on. We couldn't hear anything, so we then came in halfway through what Jamie was saying, so I do apologise, Jamie. And then Kerry went, lads, and we're just going...
It's like, I hope I'm talking to people. And
no, Jamie, you're talking to me, darling, because I heard every goddamn word of it. It was brilliant. Well done.
Okay.
Keep going with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Keep going with that, because we haven't got a clue what you just
said. All right, lads, we're talking about the Immaculate Conception to start with of Jesus, right? Where Mary got told, basically by an angel, that she was going to have this baby. Then she told Joseph. Joseph weren't so happy because he was like, you hussy. And then an angel actually come to Joseph and said, well, Joseph, it's true. She's going to have a baby by him up there. And so Joseph then
somebody had been up there, yeah.
I know, right? So Joseph then was like, yeah, that, okay, that's fine. So then she's pregnant, right? Woo! Amazing.
Yes, she's pregnant.
She's then pregnant. Then 8.5 months later, they then get a censor put out, don't they?
Yes. That was during the time of Caesar, and there was a decree issued that was just went all throughout Rome, and people had to register themselves. And there was a lot of reason for that, because the leaders in that town were definitely on the lookout. They had heard that there was a child foretold that was the new king of the Jews. And so a lot had to happen.
So, Jamie, you just said it was at the time of Caesar?
Yeah, in
He
those
makes a-
days, Caesar issued the decree.
Where does Herod come into it then?
Okay, Herod was the leader. Herod was the one that was the real problem. Caesar ordered the census that people had to register. The problem came in. Herod was the one, and you're absolutely right. I was getting to that in a roundabout way. Sorry about that. Herod was the one who was just a tyrant, wicked in every way. And there were rumors, just like with anything like that. But because prophecies had been issued long before Herod, he knew that this was coming. And he issued his decree that babies 2 and under were to die. Every male child under 2 in Bethlehem was to die.
Was that because he believed that there was the Jew?
Yeah, he believed that the baby was there. Okay. And he wasn't, entirely wrong. I mean, they fled when she was pregnant. They went throughout. They left Nazareth and went through to Egypt. And that's where the idea that is so ironic, especially today in today's Christianity with evangelicals, and I won't veer off too far, but I think that's why so many Americans and people all around the world are like, what's going on in America? Because evangelicals, you have this savior who was a refugee. So, his whole family, they were refugees. And
so there was no walls mentioned in back in those days then?
I'm sorry?
No building walls or anything like that?
No, nothing like that. So it's pretty offensive. It's like, here's a big fat-ass glass of irony for you.
So basically, Herod is Trump's grandfather.
Pretty much.
And I think one thing about Caesar, he makes a really good salad.
I knew it.
I have the alien link for you already in waiting.
Can I ask
a
question?
Yes.
Is this the same Herod that was at his at the crucifixion thing?
Herod, no, that was, you're thinking of Pontius Pilate, and he's the one that allowed the,
Herod was at the start,
right?
Pontius Pilate was at the end.
Yes,
he's the one that did the deal with the guy that betrayed Jesus.
Yes, the people, and let the people choose.
Judas.
Okay. So anyway, so they travel on a donkey. Well, she's on a donkey. Mary, we're back to Mary and Joseph, by the way, everybody. So Mary's on a donkey, bless her, little cotton socks, heavily pregnant, having to go to Joseph's birthplace.
Right. They were fleeing. They were going to, let me see. So after they registered, I know this like the mole on the back of my hand. So they went through Nazareth into Galilee to Judea to Bethlehem, and they went there to register. And they Mary, she was pledged to be married, and she gave birth, after that time. And I
was thinking about this. I was thinking, right, if right, you looked at it in today's society, right, and we all had to go to our place of birth, yeah, Well, it's all right.
Yeah.
Mine ain't that far away. But, God, could you imagine it would be chaos.
Yes. I think that we forget about that, about how stressful that must be. And we look at how stressful it is even getting to the hospital on time to give birth.
Yeah, right.
And imagine having to take up everything you own and go back to your place of birth in uncomfortable conditions, hot, through the desert,
on the back of
riding, yes, or a camel or elephant or horse or whatever. And
A Vespa?
I'll take the Vespa, Alex, for 200.
One in a taxi, one in a car.
Yeah, there you go. And thank you.
And you know the last
Mark,
one, don't you?
that.
I know. It's my job to put you off. And of course, you've got the last one. You know the song. The last one there. One on a scooter blowing his water.
All right, thank you. Anyway, moving swiftly on. I just think I think people. Yeah, okay. So it probably isn't as heavily populated as today's world. All the rest of it. But how stressful would that be if you had to go to your place of birth for a sensor? This is like old day times. This is not like modern times where you can get on a plane, train, or automobile. You're on a donkey.
Right. And there are no...
And they're smelly.
Remember,
Yeah. And there are no gas stations. There are no...
several countries.
Yeah. There are no
Yeah.
food marts, no convenience stores.
Travel 2, 3, 4, 5 days, depending on where they are, to go back to them.
Right.
And that's in the same country. These people are travelling 4, 5 different now countries to get back to where they were born.
Exactly.
From Bethlehem to...
Yeah, they went from Nazareth into Galilee, then to Judea, then to Bethlehem. That's a lot.
I believe you can't actually do that journey in real life now because of the border controls, because of countries that have infighting.
Right. Yeah, you would almost likely be shot and killed if you did that now.
Yeah, because where we're talking about now is we're talking about the very controversial area, which is like the West Bank, that sort of area, isn't it?
Yes, we're talking about you're dealing with, all throughout Israel, and then now, Palestine. You can't just stroll through those two without...
In modern times, it'd be impossible. Back in those days, sat on the back of a donkey,
right?
That would have taken a long, long time.
Couldn't they have got an open return or something?
Well, you don't get open returns on a donkey, Mark.
Well, no, you should do. You should do. You should have a choice.
You should, but that's not.
Well,
that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen, is it? So, Jamie, they basically crossed the plains, crossed the deserts, crossed this and the other. They then get to where they're supposed to be going.
Bethlehem.
Yes. No room, no place.
So where does this whole thing? There's no room at the inn, and the sleep in the cow shed, and where does that stray from the Bible?
Everything was really full, and they were very turned away. There's no room here. We don't have room. And finally, one innkeeper said, well, hey, I have. And of course, according to the Bible, it was definitely the plan of God, the will of God. It was divine intervention, because the idea of Jesus being a humble servant savior, he was called to be the savior of man. And so he didn't have a majestic or triumphant entrance into the world. He was just in the most lowly position, in a little trough that would normally hold hay or feed animals. And imagine, the heat and the stench of the animals, and the sounds all around. And
so,
I don't know. I've slept in a stable before now, and it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, but that's modern times.
Why does that not surprise me?
What? That I've slept in a stable?
Yeah.
I've slept in some strange places
thank-
too in my life.
Well, exactly, but we're not
I
going to
haven't
announce it
slept
on
in a
radio, are we?
stable when I've been in a stable.
I used to work in a stables. That's why I slept
So did
in
I.
one.
Did you sleep in a stable? Or did
Yeah,
you-
like proper
Stable,
slept.
no.
You dirty-minded presenters I've got in the studio tonight.
I was the one who said, I slept in a stable. Nobody had any thoughts of horses or anything else like that. It was just you sleeping in the stable, and everybody went, oh, yeah.
I know, right?
Even the chat room went,
God.
oh, yeah.
Okay, trying to get this back on track. So, this bundle of joy is produced
So not used to the Dark Mirror show, are you?
in a stable, in a trough.
Yes.
Where does this whole thing about 3 shepherds, 3 kings...
Okay, let me get to that. The
I love
shepherds
the way
and
he's
the wise
jumping
men.
huge segments of this.
The shepherds and the wise men are very different, and people often get that confused. So an angel came to the shepherds at night. They were guarding, their flock of animals, and they were, given a warning. Not a warning, but it felt like that. It felt very ominous. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and so this mark where I can see you coming in with aliens, some kind of presence, because in both books, the story is told in Matthew from a Jewish perspective, and then Luke, which is very, very Greek in his perspective and more evangelical.
From point of view, can you just tell us who was Luke?
These were...
he was Darth Vader's son.
There you go. And with that...
We're straight in there with the space links.
And there we have.
Wait.
The nativity of...
These shepherds...
90% of the human race is destroyed by he was Darth Vader's son.
No, Luke was a disciple, wasn't he? Luke was a disciple.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Heathens.
Was he a different faith to Jesus?
Did he have different what?
He was like, no, what happened was Jesus went around and collected people, basically, and made them disciples, and Luke was one of them.
Different faiths.
Well, we're not doing a show on Luke, we're doing a show on the birth of baby Jesus. And you
So,
have to say,
let me
the baby Jesus.
Let me get back to this. So
Mini
these
baby
shepherds
Ben.
had this...
Baby Jesus.
Oh my God. These shepherds, an angel appeared to them, okay? And so they're in both testaments, it says the glory of the Lord shone around them.
Testaments.
Do you
In
think,
both testaments,
do you think
Matthew and Luke. Mm-hmm.
Do you think when this angel appeared to them, what's your take on that? Because, okay, so we try to look at things... I know it's the Bible and it's hard to take it logically, everybody. But
yes,
it could be the Aurora Borealis or something like that. It could have been a meteor, or it could have, I don't know.
Yes, because there was a great light. The glory of the Lord it's another phrase for light, a great, astounding light, because they were extremely terrified unto almost paralysis. To where the angels, every time an angel appeared to some human in the Bible, and this is where Mark's alien kind of theory comes in, everybody is scared to death. I mean, they are so goddamn scared. And the angel always has to say, do not be afraid. It's the first thing that the angels always say. Do not be afraid. I bring you good news.
Look at the technology they have. Look at the technology they have. I mean, we all know what the light in the sky was that hung there. The angel of the Lord was an alien. He came along, parked his ship in the air, turned the spotlight on, saw the guys down there and went, "Oi, shepherds, anybody tell me the way to Nazareth?" They all freaked out, and he went, "Oh, God, not again." So he put all his gear on and his stick-on wings, and he came down on his beam of light, which was a tractor beam, and he went, "Fear not, I am not here to hurt you. Verily, I bring good news." And then they went, "Oh, all right then." So
take me to your leader.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Exactly. Take me to your dealer. I know.
Or.
So then what happened was after the big ass light, it says, that a great company or a host appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God In highest heaven, peace on earth, to who his favor rests. And
I think that was paraphrasing. I am going to say that right here and now. I can't see any host of angels just coming down and having a song about praising the Lord and it's all amazing.
Well, there was a great song. It's recorded that where the shepherds, all the hosts of heaven it's written that they cried out in like a chorus, like a cacophony of sound, a concert, giving praise for the birth of Christ. So if that happened, what do you think the people felt like that was? Do you think they felt like it was,
we all know that the burning weed. I was just about to say that the burning bush was wild Afghanistan. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh my gosh!
Oh my word! Come on! You just basically just said anybody that believes that in the birth of Jesus is a pothead.
No,
I've always said
I'm not saying that. I'm saying the shepherds are in the field tending their flock, right? Yeah. They're probably, not being funny. When you've got more than one shepherds, that's a party. That's got to be.
Yeah.
Right, because shepherds are notoriously lone people. Well, shepherds are normally lone people, right? They're normally like just one shepherd and his dog.
Yes.
This is a one shepherd.
It's shepherds, right?
One planet is goat.
What?
It's very lonely.
Wouldn't it depend on the size of the flock?
Well, I reckon they all had a meeting and said, we've got a hell of a lot of people down in old Bethlehem. They're going to need feeding. So if we join our flocks together, we'll have a bit of a party. And the next day, we'll go down and take some offerings.
Hell, I tell you.
So I just find it strange, right, that generally, bearing in mind, you've got to remember the day. We're not talking like super flocks. Oh, God.
Right.
Super flocks of sheep.
Mm-hmm.
Not like today's flocks.
Modern day
what does the flock say? It says, praise the Lord.
We're not talking modern day consumption. We're talking people that used to work the land, looked after sheep, just happened to be sheep. They were called shepherds. So there would have been more than one of them looking after a flock. So I'm not talking to them just going, I'll tell you what, lads, there's a meeting just outside of Bethlehem. Bring your sheep in. Let's all meet up for a little bit of a gather around the old fire, see what's happening, lads.
But it may have been that way. It may well have been that way because you don't know. These shepherds might have had to have gone to Bethlehem to do the census and had to take their flock with them.
Did they?
That's a very wise observation.
Did they all have
tea
towels on their heads and stick-on beards? Because I know I did when I played a shepherd.
That modern day.
Jamie, the names of the three wise men, was one of them Nebuchadnezzar?
Who?
Balthazar, Melchior?
No. Nebuchadnezzar was a king and not one of the Magi. And so we have. Are we on the Magi now?
No, we're still on the shepherds. They haven't even visited the baby Jesus yet.
Can I just ask one question about the shepherds, Jamie?
Yes.
According to your research, it obviously, when it came to the three wise men, which we'll cover in a second,
you can find that these days.
They had names.
Three wise men and a virgin.
The three shepherds have names.
They are not named, no.
Why do you reckon that is?
Because they are lowly. Shepherds were not considered...
Names were withheld to protect the innocent.
Yeah, there you go. They were not considered noble people, and throughout the Bible, the naming is a huge thing. I mean, you go through thousands and thousands of names. This person begot this person, begot this person. And so that's why, like, when women are named in the Bible, it's so powerful, because women really were crap in biblical time. So if they had a name and they had a story, it was a major thing. So
there's these three shepherds with their flock, blah, blah, blah. They decide that they're going to head towards this location, follow the star or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm. They knew it was foretold, and they followed the star. The shepherds didn't follow the star. They were visited by an angel. The wise men use like astrology. And so there are
I didn't know. I thought
very paranormal things.
The shepherds and the wise men followed the star, but so
no, the shepherds
wise men that followed the star.
No, the shepherds were told
where to go.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know about the
and they popped along to the stable and said hello. We're shepherds. We've come to see the baby Jesus, and oh, there he is, blimey! And then they went off. And
you can just see, definitely a baby. Have a present.
Congratulations on your birth of your baby, Mary.
Bring gifts?
No.
Gold, Frankenstein, and Gur.
Yes, there were 3.
That was the Magi who did that.
That's the Magi.
I'm asking the person that knows more about this than us three. Did the shepherds bring any gifts?
It's not so much recorded that they came to worship into, and it's symbolic because all throughout Christianity, the idea is that the poor are to serve and worship and offer comfort, offer food, those kind of things. So their role was to show how we are to revere Christ. Even though we are lowly and have nothing, we can extol Christ. We can worship him. We can adore him. Like, of course, it was customary to bring like wine, food. They're shepherds. They had meat, different things. And there's no like concrete proof that they did or did not bring certain things, where the wise men were of noble lineage. Okay. And so it's very well recorded what they brought and where they were from.
Just flipping it around slightly. So you got the shepherds, angel came down, go and see this place, blah, 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 la, la, la. They head off with their flock, their meat, their whatever. So how do the wise men come into this story?
Okay, so they were after the shepherds, because so the backstory on that is that they used the stars. They followed the prophecies, and they followed the patterns of the stars. And that's astrology. Yes. So that's what they used. They were like, okay, this is happening. These stars are lining up with this prophecy. And they, followed the star of Bethlehem, and that's how they got to him. And they were from 3 different places. There was Balthasar, was from Arabia. And I always get the second name wrong. Some people say Melchior or Melchior was Persian, and Gaspar was from India. So
he took a wrong turn somewhere.
Yeah.
So these 3 guys are completely different places in the world.
Yes, and met
they
and
are based
went
around
to
astrology. They're looking at the stars. They're looking at things. They think there's something aligning. We need to go there.
Yes, they followed.
So they head that way.
They followed the astrology and astronomy. So both of those, they were.
Guys were given a heads up, because obviously we're talking quite.
Well, they knew of the prophecy too.
Yeah, but you got to remember this is happening like when somebody's giving birth. It happens at a particular pace.
Yes.
So these guys would have been given a heads up probably before Mary went into labour.
Well, they knew because of the census. They had to travel too. I mean, they had to, people had to register. People were being misplaced. And so they knew that this was happening. And they knew that Herod had ordered a hit on all those babies. All those boys were killed. So, of course, they had a huge heads up. They knew the skies foretold, the stars aligned and foretold what was happening. They followed very carefully. That's why when people say, oh, there's no astrology in the Bible, there's no astronomy, there's no witchcraft, they don't know the Bible. They're full of shit.
I agree.
The Bible is full of paranormal phenomenon.
I've just been asked a question by one of our listeners. They've sent it to me privately. Was Jesus, and I'll say the Christmas story as well, the product of pot-smoking hippies who wrote a story while stoned hundreds of years ago?
No.
That's just what I've been asked. It sounds like Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Machine.
The thing is, I think, right, okay. So I know we're taking a more light-hearted look at the story, but at the end of the day, I think it's very symbolic when you've got the. I think when you right, where's my thought patterns go with this? When you've got 3 shepherds that go down. First of all, you're 3 shepherds and 3 wise men. That number in itself is very mystical. It always symbolises the Trinity. Yeah, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Holy Trinity.
Now, bearing in mind that this is the birth of the Son. Yeah. So when you look into what a magi is, it is something we've talked about previously, going back to the very, very early stages of every religion. Yeah, which is the I can never say this word. The Zoroastrianisms. I can't ever say that word, and I do apologise, but it is...
Did you just have a stroke when you did that?
No, honestly, I'm trying to pronounce it. But that is who these guys were. Now, like you said, Jamie, they're looking into astrology and cosmology and stuff like that. And you have to understand the date, go back to when that was relevant, to the time. That is something that's quite incredible. And I don't think that there are many people to the level of knowledge that these guys would have had. So they're looking for omens all the time throughout, not just to do with the birth of Christ, but they're looking at omens all the time. And when things start to align, and then they get the call and they go, there's an omen there, right? And I kind of want to go in a bit of Eddie Izzard at this point. There's an omen. And then they're actually given that call to go there themselves, and it's like things start adding up. We talk about coincidences and synchronicities. This is all what starts happening around this time. Then you get strange occurrences happening, like no matter what happened on that hilltop with those sheep, they experience something quite incredible. For them to go down into Bethlehem to actually see if it's true, their job was to spread the word that he had been born.
Yes, and he was not a baby when they saw. He was not an infant by the time the wise men got to him, and they.
Whoa. 2 seconds. What I remember about the nativity when I was at school and doing RE and all that, this all happened at the same time. So at the birth of Jesus, the shepherds turned up, the wise men turned up.
That's for the sake of a play in a production to combine it.
This is me. It's like these shepherds are on a hill. They're telling them to go one way, and then you've got 3 wise men in 3 different continents going, right, we've got to go there. They're obviously going to have that mentality in their heads first because they've got a longer distance to happen, to turn up.
By the time that the wise men appeared, actually, because that's another thing, a lot of people that even are, Christians and consider themselves authorities. Jesus was no longer a swaddled infant. They show that it's a fallacy. He was probably almost 1 or 2, and they gave. He would have been between 1 and 2, and the gifts they gave seemed really strange, but they had very symbolic meanings. And if you're going to talk about the gifts, okay.
A Nintendo Game Gear.
On the gifts is frankincense, myrrh,
and gold.
So
the gold is associated with kings, and Christians believe that Jesus was the King of Kings. Frankincense was an incense, and that they use that in churches and worship to promote, just like a Native American would smudge, or any of us would smudge, or use.
This is the whole thing that over the years, myrrh.
That's a perfume. Myrrh? It's essence. What they gave was a perfume and an oil that they used it in that time to anoint bodies, and then put on the dead to make them fragrant.
So why didn't they just give him a bottle of? Why didn't they just give him a bottle of high karate for his birthday?
I think the other thing I think people are missing about those 3 gifts is when you start looking at it from a spiritual perspective. Gold is an element, and it's one of the most precious elements on the planet. And it's also, funny enough, believe it or not, quite rare.
Yeah.
Right?
It is.
Yeah. And when you start introducing gold into occult workings and stuff like that, it adds an extra potency to it that it's one of those key points when you add that in. Then you've got frankincense. Now, that is the base of so many like incenses and stuff like that. And if you just burn frankincense in your home, that will cleanse auras and spiritual workings. And, you know, it is in itself. It is
I thought
very,
the villagers
very
did that.
Then myrrh.
Yeah, these are very, very paranormal, supernatural kind of elements and
myrrh is actually
substances.
part of a resurrection. Myrrh gets used a lot, as Jean has just said in the chat room. It was like you said as well. It was very, very. See, myrrh nowadays you can get it in gum and stuff like that, whereas this is an oil. It's very expensive, and
extremely.
That's right. That's right, and that's another factor. None of these gifts that were given were cheap gifts. They were all really for the privileged and the kings.
Yes,
you know,
and very, very, very rare, and symbolic in a way. The myrrh was given for a very specific reason, because they knew from the prophecy that Jesus had to suffer and die. So that was actually a gift to say, this, we know what's coming. This gold is for your life and prosperity. The incense is for you to like meditate and worship through your service, and the myrrh is for your death. So, and that it's in three things. Again, that whole Trinity, you know, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Jamie, can I ask you a little question, please?
It's never a little question.
And
but go ahead.
It's kind of. I don't know whether I'm just me being my silly head. You've got these three wise men. Which continents are they from?
Okay, we have Arabia, Persia, and India. And so really, and they were...
Who brought what?
Pardon?
Who brought what?
Okay, I do know this. Okay, Balthazar, who was considered black. He had a black skin. You know how you always see one that's black? So he brought myrrh. He's the one that brought the myrrh.
Okay, so what continent is Balthazar and myrrh?
Arabia for the myrrh, and Balthazar.
Arabia with myrrh.
Yes, and then Melchior was from Arabia. Okay, they have that too. There's a conflicting thing. So Persia and Arabia are going to be, to some people, the same. So Melchior brought gold.
Okay, so so we got him from there bringing gold from what continent?
So those two were Arabia and Persia. So however you wanted to divide, and in different testaments, the Luke and Matthew, they have them mixed up. Like
because I heard it a different way, different names and different gifts, but I believe
and that there's some discrepancy with that. But then they have Gaspar from so India, and then other places reference him as the king of Sheba that brought the frankincense.
Just going back to the gold, is there, I don't know this, I'm just spitballing and throwing it out there, is Arabia a good place that there is plenty of gold? I don't know this.
Then it would have been. I'm not so sure about now.
Don't forget,
I'm just spitballing. So.
Yeah, but there was a huge trade routes.
And they got gold
the
from
Silk Road.
Yeah, you've got
not the one on the internet. The internet wasn't around then.
The Spice Road and the everything else. But I'm just trying to work out, was gold from where they're coming from, or was it a trade good and blah 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 blah. That's what I'm trying to get in my head.
Okay. Well, I think that gold was so heavily, it was not super common, but definitely traded. So I don't want to speculate too much about where the gold came from, because it was so precious, and being like part of the Roman Empire and everything, there was going to be gold. So it would almost be impossible to.
That's what I was trying to get in my head.
Right. And the thing is,
natural or whether it was brought in, blah blah blah.
And so people don't realize
what I've learned so far is this didn't happen on the one night. The shepherds didn't turn up, and then the three wise men.
No, and the wise men were going to tell Herod.
Yeah, the shepherds turn up at birth, and then the wise men turn up a couple of years later.
Yeah, a year or two later.
One or two. Okay?
But Herod asked the wise men. I don't know if people know that Herod, because they were almost of the same nobility as Herod. They were even above him. He asked them, "Find Jesus and tell me where this child is, so he could go and worship him." So Herod lied to them. He said, "Hey, I need you guys to find this baby. I want to pay homage and worship him." But really, Herod wanted to kill him. And so what happened is the wise men were about to go back to Herod after presenting their gifts and paying respect to the new king. And they were about to go back and report to Herod, but they were warned in a dream. So again, we have a spiritual occurrence where prophecies and beings visited people through dreams very frequently, and mediums and other wise people in text. And they were visited in a dream, and they were warned, actually. I don't want us to say visited. They were specifically warned, do not alert Herod, because Herod wanted to, and then at that point they knew that Herod wanted to murder the child, which they should have kind of caught on, since he ordered the death of all those babies. But, everyone's not a genius. So
How long did this census last?
I'm sorry?
How long did the census last?
You know what? I don't know that. And I don't know that anyone knows an actual, I can try and pull it, but I don't know if anyone knows an actual date. But it could have taken even a year.
Being logical, I'm just trying to put a timeline in it. So.
Okay, so let me see.
It doesn't really matter, because we're talking about the Christmas story, so that's not really that relevant. What we want to look at really is the more mystical side of it, because it is a story that has got many facets, like you said, Jamie. You've got angels coming down, you've got visions, you've got people coming through in dreams, you've got omens, you've got astrology, you've got so much going on in this story, haven't you? That it's kind of like, even in a nativity, it's accepted. It's just accepted. An angel came down from heaven above, and that's something that's sort of like just accepted. No one questions that. And there are various theories about this throughout time, isn't there, Mark?
Yeah, I was just thinking Krista Berg's got a lot to answer to.
But I mean, before, people have said this could possibly be
ancient alien visitor.
Yeah.
There is a lot to say about that, because there's not just a Christmas story, and not just down in the Bible, but there are a lot of records from various religions about that particular time when there was this, and I will use inverted brackets, star in the sky that hovered and then moved and then hung over something else and then hovered and moved, and it was reported in quite a few things. So, I don't know back then if they had any helicopters, but I don't think they did.
The problem is, we're taking a story from which has been written, which is ancient. There are no records to back up any of this, is there? Not only written accounts like Luke's.
There's not actual, hello, I was there and I saw this. It was blah, blah, blah. No, there's none of that, because, let's face it, even the Bible's a load of stories written by people hundreds of years later. So,
yes, in different times.
Exactly.
And there's no existing records of the censor that we can go and check facts to, like there would be, like even looking at the Doomsday Book, that is a censor that we can refer to, you know, and that's the problem with this, isn't it? But it is the same throughout the whole of the Bible, because these are ancient stories that are told, retold, time and time again.
Well, that's what they say. The Bible's the greatest story ever told, and you know my opinion on all that sort of thing. It's a set of rules to control man.
Yes, and census there in that time was definitely about taxation and money. So it wasn't a time where they were just, oh, let's count the people and look at our economy. You know, it was about money. You paid money, and I'm imagining, I'm almost certain that there were like steep consequences. You know, if you couldn't pay that, people were jailed and everything else. When you know it was about taxation more so than counting people.
Definitely, but also I think personally myself that with as somebody's just pointed out as well, they're on the same wavelength as me. A lot of the stories, especially the Christmas story, like the light in the sky and this, that, and the other, are they interpreted because at the time they didn't understand it, they didn't know what it was, and this, that, and the other. And us enlightened folks these days, we would go, oh look, you know, oh look, it's a TR3B, or oh look, it's a Venusian, or something like that. You know, and if somebody came and appeared before us and said, "Ha ha, I wear a silver suit and I've come to tell you the words of the Lord," we'd be like, "All right, Dave, take that silly suit off. You look silly, mate."
I have to say, I still think in this day and age, if you was sort of sitting up on a hill looking after sheep, if you was a shepherd, for example, and you had an experience like that, it would scare the life out of you. Even
you'd leave a ridge in the hills.
It would scare the life out of you, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And if you have people that are reading omens and then come along, I mean, I have to say, whatever you think of the Bible, it's a story of birth, which is always a happy occasion, isn't it? The story, you know, when someone gives birth, it's lovely. You know, it's like, oh, it's a baby, and
well, look at me,
and hope, and you know, it's a very special time for whoever. But now this is the birth of Christ. This isn't just anybody. This is the birth of Christ. And so, although it's been distilled down and we don't know real true life accounts, and we're only taking the Bible as a point of reference for tonight's show, it's played out in schools all across many countries. And often the children make it extra special because they bring their own kind of...
Christmas isn't Christmas until you've seen a crying shepherd.
Well, yeah, kind of, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to discount that the people were completely, yes, they didn't have our type of technology and understanding and science, but throughout biblical history, if you pay very close attention, which is so interesting now because so many people that are Christians, especially evangelical Christians, they shun anything that has to do with numerology, astrology, anything that looks paranormal, witchcraft, mediums, whatever, they shun it. But that was science during the time of the Bible. Those were the wise people. And kings, God's people, relied on witches. They relied on mediums. They relied on people having psychic dreams, prophets. So I get a little bit agitated when people are so harsh. I know that before I left the church altogether, people were very leery of me because of my ways and beliefs. They were very put off, and they said, "You're dabbling in the devil's religion. You're evil. You're a witch. You're all these things." And it's like, well, no, these are, just like different people. You say different people have spiritual gifts in the church. Well, not everybody's gifts come by way of the church. If that's the case, how do you explain people that get up in a church and speak in tongues or have dreams? Aren't they divining? Aren't they doing witchcraft? Aren't they doing? Yeah, that's a whole different shit show. But I just think, they say, no consulting the stars, no consulting, but everybody does it. It's a science. And I get very, very pissed when people say, oh, there's nothing, supernatural in the Bible. And I'm like, you want to bet that's telling me you haven't read
The whole
the Bible.
thing's full of it. The whole thing's full
Everything
of it.
is supernatural in the Bible.
One thing I will say is my cue in religion. Religion starts far too many wars. There's always my God is better than your God. And at the end of the day, we're all talking and believing in an invisible man who hasn't come down and spoken to us for a long time. And I think it's very, very silly that most religious people, I find, are very condescending to, people who necessarily aren't religious per se, but are spiritual. Because I've got a lot of friends like Kerry and myself and you and that. I'm not religious at all, but I am spiritual. Kerry, spiritual. She'd be classed as a witch because of her powers. I'd be classed as a nut job. Well,
but at the end of the day, God never really sort of did like mass talks. Do you know what I mean? He always would appear or talk through in a different way. It never was didn't sort of a whole conference, God conference, did he?
Yeah.
It was never.
Well, he didn't have Skype then, did he?
Through
but
people.
It's about your connection, isn't it, to whatever you want to call it. We call it the source or, the light or God or whatever name you want to put on it. It's the same thing, no matter what religion you are. They all talk about a higher plane,
power or element.
Yeah,
exactly. So why are they always condescending and belittling of any other religion and people don't believe it?
How did they, if they don't believe in consulting spirits, another dimension, then how do they get any message from God? If everything is evil and prohibited, how do they learn about God? If God's not popping down on the earth to say, here I am strolling through. Jesus was the last example of that. And so if everything is wicked and prohibited, how do they get message? How do they have prophets? And how do they have evangelists? How do they have people that give prophecy? The church is heavily based off prophecy.
Exactly. It's all right for them. It's their religion. So they're people who say, oh, I just spoke to God. They can go, oh, really? Did you? But if somebody like Joe Bloggs down the road went, oh, guess what? I just spoke to somebody who said he was God. They'd be like, burn him!
Exactly. Now, I have like a thing where I bring a lot of healing to people through touch and kind of divining what's wrong with them. And so that's a big thing. It's like, well, the church recognizes you as a healer. But the minute that I would do something that the church couldn't capitalize or profit off of, you're a witch and we're going to excommunicate you because you're not following the profitable way to heal. Like we want to exploit your gifts for money. If you're doing this for free, it's witchcraft. If you're doing it in the church, and the church is getting spiritual blessings, that's the will of God.
Yeah, they're not getting their arms, so they're not happy. And I've got one thing I have to add, and I haven't done this for a little while, is the Christmas story. I think at the end of the day, the Christmas story is a magical, special thing, especially when you're a young kid and you're doing the nativity. And I think it should stay and be kept like that because it is a magical time. But I've just got one thing to say about that light in the sky, and that's aliens. And there you go.
And on that note, we've actually come to the end of the Dark Mirror show, believe it or not. That was...
I got it in there!
Yeah, we knew you would tonight. We knew you would. Now, don't forget, guys, the last show of the year is on Sunday evening, going live at 9 o'clock. It is the Parasearch Radio Christmas party. So don't forget, join us there. We then have a break until the 7th of January. We are taking a couple of weeks off. So if you miss any of our shows or you get Parasearch withdrawal symptoms, don't forget, go over to our YouTube channel, click like, share and subscribe, and you can catch up with all of the past shows that we've done over the last year. If you want to listen back further, then go over to Archive Parasearch. That's got some old shows on there that we all did, and some many great guests.
That's when Mark had hair.
Sorry, Carl?
That's when Mark had hair.
What are you talking about? I've never had hair.
Archive Parasearch, which has got some of our old shows on there. We are also on Podbean. We are also on SoundCloud. And, of course, you can catch up with us all over on the Parasearch Radio group page and like page over on Facebook. And don't forget, we're also on Twitter. And guess what we called on Twitter?
The twits. Dark Mirror.
Parasearch Radio is where we're going with that one. My God, everybody.
Yes.
I'm just talking about our
Jeepers.
show. Oh my God. Our
I'd
show.
like-
Our show's the Dark Mirror Show.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Jamie, and for trying to bring some sense into the room on the Christmas story. On that note, Merry Christmas, darling.
Thank you all.
Can I just say, Jamie, you got to come back because you're more than welcome on here anytime. And also, I'm just like to say, I was made a granddad 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm going down on Monday, Christmas Eve, and spending Christmas down there with my missus and daughters, and I'm going to see my granddaughter for the first time.
Congratulations, my friend.
Thank you. So there you go, Christmas birth. And
Cakes and frankincense.
And don't forget the gold.
Yes. Little
Go.
gold.
No, I thought the villagers killed Frankenstein.
And on that note, thank you so much for listening.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Say good night, guys.
Good night,
guys.
Aliens. There you go.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.